Hi, folks. Would that I could always come to you all joyful and carefree. And I want you to center in heart because underneath everything, that's always there, not just for me, but for everyone. Um, that's in heart. And the rest of what happens is more on the surface. Um, but as we center in heart, we have a root that goes down deep into self and deep into the earth, if you will, that it grounds us, it anchors us, it gives us balance, and it helps us take the things of the everyday life. Now, um, I've hesitated to share with you lately. I'm going through some getting rid of beliefs, and it's rocking my world. Um, I might have maybe less beliefs than most, might have gone through quite a number of them, but we're all riddled with beliefs through and through. And so it's a constant arising if we're, I don't like these words, but if we're on the spiritual path, if we're warriors of truth, if we're beings of light incarnate here. Um, and I'm finding it intensifying. And it's hard. It's like at first the beliefs that get exposed and get to go up in flames are more specific. Um, but as time goes on, we see webs of beliefs, things that are connected up that begin to fall apart. And we begin to be less and less anchored and locked into the matrix and more empty. Now, another way to say that is centered in heart, but empty is also true. And overall, it's good. I mean, we don't find that we're polarizing so much, and we're amazed at things that used to, really pull our tail or rattle our cage or whatever you want to say, things that used to upset us or that we used to feel like we had to take a stand on one way or another. We're amazed to find ourselves quite unconcerned. Things that used to be important are just, we're not taking ourselves so seriously. And the things of this world so seriously. And there are such major benefits to that. If you're experiencing any of it already, then you know what I mean, or you at least have an inkling. But if you're really in the midst of this, uh, you know, you're just a whole new person that you're constantly getting to know and getting acquainted with. And you don't know yourself, and that's one thing that you're acquainted with, is that you don't know. And overall, it's really rather nice, you know. But easy? Hmm. On the one hand, it's totally easy. On the other hand, it's hard work. So it's both at the same time. And I can't apologize for that. That's just how it is for me. Okay. Um, I talked a little while back about, is there hierarchy or is there not? And there are some that are so rabidly committed, radically committed to this equalization thing, this no hierarchy whatsoever, that they're not seeing the other side of that. And I'm going to say they're being polarized there. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I'm finding so far two sides of pretty much every coin. And so on the one hand, it's absolutely true. All is equal, all is one, and all we are. I used to think of it like, imagine a great big huge faceted crystal or diamond, and it's huge, and it's got like almost an infinite number of facets. It's so beautiful. And maybe there's a sun in the middle, you know, it's just exquisite, unbelievably beautiful. And each one of us, each sentient being is a facet. And so if a blade of grass is sentient, then it's one of the facets. And what that is, a puppy or an extraterrestrial, or, you know, a sun has a consciousness, so does a galaxy, so does a universe, all facets or groupings of facets. And each facet is, in effect, a different perspective. It's all one. There's nothing that's not the one. But each one has a different angle of vision or perspective on reality. And they're the only one that sees from precisely that perspective. And so there's this intensity of individuality on the one hand, and the individuality is what makes the thing beautiful, all the individual facets. But on the other hand, you can't get away from the fact that it's only one stone. Okay? So now that's a 3D picture that I just painted for you there. You know, I drew something in space and so on. So the analogy is probably limited, but it can be helpful. You know, we think in pictures, and it can be helpful. So oneness, individuality in the midst of oneness. Now let's look at the globe. We've got it all divided out, don't we? And isn't that artificial? Because we're one. And yet we have the beauty of the unique individuation. We have the individual perspectives, the very differing perspectives on reality. And yet somewhere in the midst of all of it, we've lost touch with the reality that we're one. And it's my belief or understanding that that's very much been engineered. Our power is in our union. And divide and conquer is an ancient war tactic. And so I ran into a video. It's a Project Avalon interview, and I'm not going to suggest that everybody watch it. I'll, of course, put a link in the description field here and in the scribed document that goes with this video. But I'm not going to recommend that everyone watch it because I'm still reeling. It's over 2 hours. It might be closer to 3. You know, and it's 2+. I don't remember exactly. It's called The Rulers of the World, and it's Bill Ryan is interviewing not one of the Illuminati, but one of their direct henchmen. And it's difficult. What you do is you come into the aura and the energy and the mentality of this bunch, and their arrogance knows absolutely no bounds. It's one thing to say that to them we're just property or sheeple or the herd. Those are just words. That's nothing like the ultimate disdain with which they view us and manipulate us and create all the disinfo, and they just laugh behind the scenes. They just think it's so funny. You know, they love putting the truth out everywhere. They'll put it out once, the actual truth about anything. They'll put it out once, and then they'll bury it in all this other stuff. But you can't, they've covered themselves. You can't ever come back and say, well, you didn't tell us. And they can point to that once where they buried it on page 12 in a small 1-inch column where they told the truth. And so they're manipulators supreme. And what I'm seeing in this, now you're always going to get disinformation along with your information. With some people, it's more innocent. When you're dealing with people like this, innocence is not a word that can get within 10 feet of them. So you can't take everything in this interview for fact. And don't look for any truth in it. Truth is too sacred to get near these guys either. But they have their own perspective, which for them is their quote-unquote truth. And this guy is a henchman. He's a problem solver. He was recruited probably before birth. I'm thinking he's got some DNA that's real critical. He's not one of the bloodlines, but see, he confirms along with David Icke, and I think there are others. Let's see. The Andromedans talk about the ruling elite and the bloodlines, and who else? I'm seeing this researcher. His name won't come to me right now. But there are some good researchers out there, and we've all heard this. And so he says that in actuality, the main bloodlines, there are hundreds of them, but the ruling ones, there are 33. And they keep them clean. And they simply rule the world, and to them, it's absolute ownership. And we are literally like stock in the field. Your cattle don't own the land that they live on. Well, according to these guys, we're like that, we don't own anything either. And they're really clear, too, about wanting to cull the herd. And for the first time, theoretically, we know, well, it would be easier if you had a smaller group of people to manage. That's going to be easier. Because there aren't very many at the top of this pyramid, and they have to work very hard to keep us fighting against one another. They have to keep us very much divided, and they have to make different groups polarize against one another because their biggest fear is that we would unite, that we would remember that we are brethren, and be unstoppable. And so, but what came out in this interview was how clear it is that when you have so many people and you have the kind of technology that we have today with the cameras and everything everywhere, you can't easily keep UFOs and moon bases and things like that hidden anymore. There's too many people, and there's too many secrets too, and they don't like things that are messy and unmanageable. They want absolute control. And so there's just the real clear and furthermore, there's a justification of what they're doing, which is you cull the herd in order to improve the stock. And I'm sorry, my friends, but they think they're doing a good thing, and it's for the benefit of all of us. Just like the hunters talk about, well, they need to go out and shoot some of the deer, or else all the rest of them, there won't be enough to eat, and there'll be too many of them, and they'll starve and be miserable. And anyway, they have it all worked out, and they're very, very serious about how they're doing a good thing, and it's in our own best interests in addition to theirs. And they also figure another justification that was used is, would you kill 300 people in order to save 30,000? Now, I forget what that's called. I mean, aside from the ends justifying the means, the logic in it is rotten. But there's a lot of that going around because people are in mind, they're not in heart. Heart doesn't have an issue like that. Heart's not going to be playing around with some ephemeral future wherein 30,000 might die, because heart, it stays in the moment and does what's right in this moment. And so you can't trick heart the way you can head. And so that exposes why we need to be kept in the mind, so that we can be confused with philosophies and ideas and thoughts and misled. All right. So uh, they have it all worked out, and to them it makes perfect sense. But of course, we cannot be allowed to know what that looks like for the most part. So this is an unusual interview. This guy that's being interviewed apparently has a terminal disease of some kind or another. And I think he told Bill that he's been given 2 years, I think, if I heard right. So God knows what his motivations are for revealing this stuff. But you've got to know that the Illuminati don't let things get out like this. I mean, even if the interview was taped, it wouldn't make it onto the air if they didn't have some kind of reason. They approve it. All right. So one of the big things that came out of this to me, and see, there's so much of it that's a downer. Energetically, all of you empaths, do not watch this. All right, unless you have the power of Almighty God and Hercules and I don't know who else shielding you. Be very careful. Or if you're going to watch it, take it in small doses. I'm pretty protected and pretty strong in the heart, pretty solid. And I watched it like 2 or 3 days ago, and I'm still having repercussions and repercussions. Now, I watched it all the way through. And so maybe that wasn't the wisest thing. But anyway, I'm just sharing. One of the best things that came out of it was, and it was kind of buried in there, but they have these plans and they announce their plans. That's part of their twisted glee, to tell the truth and to inform us publicly what they're going to do. And one of the things that came out is like these plans to give us okay, this is what came out. If you draw attention to it, they won't do it. And so if too many people pipe up, speak up, or draw attention to something, they'll change their plans. They really will. It will cause them to change their plans. And you may have heard again and again, there have been plans to do a mandatory vaccination program. And that has been on the books, I think, for probably decades. They've been trying to make it happen, but we just won't cooperate. And when enough of us are rebellious, it doesn't happen. Well, I mean, how much better news can you get? I think that's phenomenal, fantastic, and wonderful. And it's a real lesson. I think we need to take that to heart. Sure, sometimes you have to pay a price. Some people, when you have a movement for freedom of any kind, some people wind up in jail. Some people wind up hurt. You don't know if it's going to be you or if it's not. But until we can lay it on the line and be so in the moment that we're comfortable doing what's right, regardless, then do we deserve our freedom? Um, the Andromedan Council shared with Alex Collier that they've been waiting for us to mature, to grow up, to take on a more sovereign attitude, to take responsibility for our life, for our planet, just for whatever, you know? And absent that, they're not interested in messing with us. They don't want to babysit. They don't want to come in and do some kind of rescue that we would call for. And then, should things go bad in the future, we turn around and blame them. I'm sure there's all kinds of history like that, in the ancient past. And besides, it's just what's right. It's time for us to grow up. How are we ascending if we can't stand up and do what's right in the moment, whatever that is? And that doesn't mean you have to get fanatic and crazy. If you've been watching my videos a while, that's not the message here. The message is absolutely peaceful non-compliance. And you've got to be practical as well. But what does practical mean? Take it out of the head and put it in the heart. Take all your definitions that your mind has and shit can them. All right? They're worthless. File 13. Mind doesn't get it. Mind is the one that can go for that. Oh, let's kill these 300 over here because, there's 30, that's going to save 30,000 people. Yeah, right. By that line, and I'll sell you beachfront property in, what is it, Arizona, New Mexico, Utah. All right, so now another really nice thing that I think a lot of us have figured out by now is that there's absolutely no nuclear war on the books. It's not planned by these guys. It just pollutes things for way too long. And you don't set off nuclear warheads in a country and then you can't occupy it. You might get rid of the problem on the ground, but then the ground becomes the problem. So, but we've seen that. Okay, I think a lot of us have seen that. If you haven't heard of all of the many, many endless instances where UFOs have disarmed our nuclear warheads, the missiles right in the silos have been turned off, and so on. It's just apparent, and I would frankly bet that there have been missiles fired for whatever reason that have been disarmed in the air. So that's a mighty good thing too, wouldn't you say? Uh, when people my age, when the baby boomers were in school, that was the thing that we were fed to make us afraid. The Cold War and all that. So that's really good news. So there is some good news. A really interesting thing that came out of it that's frankly sickening is the whole thing with the seeds and the GMO crops. Now, it's out there, it's clear, it's apparent, but we don't put all the pieces together completely. Well, when you listen to this guy, you get it telepathically, if nothing else. You see the vision that they've got. And that vision is so clear and so obvious. Once they get to where all the crops everywhere and farmers and countries are absolutely being forced into this. I mean, it's terrible the things that are going on if they won't agree. Once the organic people are forced out and the heritage seeds are all locked away or destroyed or whatever, then the farmer doesn't get his seeds except off the truck, and he's got to buy them year after year. Well, then they're in a position to create famine and to kill lots and lots and lots of people and to play those kind of frankly, they're war games. But that's the kind of thing that would happen, that could easily happen. That's what's behind this. It's an unbelievable measure of control. And furthermore, he announced that, and I'm going to say something here that I probably shouldn't, but we're not going to be allowed to say the name of a big major corporation like Monsanto, which is a curse word for anybody, for a lot of us right now. They are going to be suing and destroying anyone who mentions their name. They've got the legal thing covered to where they can do this, and so they're going to stop anybody being able to mention them. And so that's evil, but when you've got all the cards, all the money, all the power, all the control, all the politicians, all the everything, you get to write your own ticket. So there we go. They do plan to do the false flag ET thing. And there was something that was really interesting. The Phoenix Lights, those triangular craft that have been seen and filmed in different places. This guy said, people haven't put it together yet that they're modular, that those triangles can all interlink and interlock and make a much bigger craft. And they've got some way that they just join up together. And then when they're way up in the sky, sometimes we will see ships splitting apart and then rejoining back together as if they were one. Well, he says that these are ours. These are not ETs. However, we got the technology. The technology is likely ET. But this is human beings running this particular show. So these craft are planned to be a part of the false flag op to prove to us that ETs are bad. And of course, we need more stringent protection and laws and security and snooping and spy, whatever. You know the drill. Patriot Act crap. The thing that's kind of getting to me mostly maybe is the whole idea that all the cities, all the countries, all the borders, all the boundaries, they're phony. They're completely phony. We've been looking from the outside at them, and there's a lot of animosity against the New World Order. One world government. It's been made out to be evil. And it's kind of interesting, everything is upside down and backwards in the 3D realm here. And so we know too that the great big companies are completely multinational, we call them. They're completely international. They don't see borders and boundaries. And in watching the video, it was like an oh my God. And I saw the falsehood and the falseness of how we've been manipulated into separating out. It's just a part, a bigger part, an older part of the divide and conquer thing. I mean, you can take this one all the way back to, what was it, the Tower of Babel, when we were given different languages. Divide and conquer, forever divide and conquer. Anything that separates us out from our brethren, we have to look at really suspiciously to see if there's anything legitimate under it. And, I think for most Americans, that's pretty hard, because we have a tendency to believe in our country and what she stands for. And so I'm just looking at that now, and it's hard. On the one hand, I'm studying about the new republic of the United States with a lowercase u. And on the other hand, I'm realizing, oh my God, all boundaries are false in a way. And it throws you into a tailspin because, see, that's a more fundamental belief that boundaries are good. They're good for us, that we need to protect them, and we need to have this separate identity, do you see? And so the thing is, on top of a belief like that, that's at the base of the pyramid, and many, many other beliefs have been stacked up that rest on that. And so that one won't pull out from under you cleanly. When that one starts going down, a lot of other things begin to tumble and rumble around. And so I'm just looking at that. I'm certainly not saying I'm for what is called the New World Order. I'm not for any form of control of the people by these ones who, in effect, are monsters. I mean, that's not fair, but the behavior, the attitudes, the whole control and manipulation thing is monstrous. And so there's no form of government governance or control that I would accept that they had any part of. But I'm looking at the artistry that's been used to separate us out, and it's tearing at me in my heart. I'm aware of other lifetimes, many other lifetimes, and I've been a soldier often enough, and I've fought and I've defended, and we've all gone to war, my friends. And it was our everything. We had the most deepest vested beliefs in whatever country it was. I was probably in Scotland among the clans, and there was some really intense fighting there with England. And it's your everything. You swear it your allegiance, and you lay your life on the line. And you build and mold and live your life around such values. And so, you see, they're being pulled out. I'm not Teresa. This is a form that you see before you. But look at me and look at yourself as the soul, if that word works for you, higher self, inner being, essence, whatever. Pick a word, it doesn't matter. You're in many incarnations simultaneously. You are so much more than is represented by the few years that you have walked this earth in this body. This is the minutest portion of you, what is visible. You're much more. And I find that as we weed the garden of the beliefs, thoughts, and attitudes that we've developed and believed in, and as we're given the vision so that we can see, when we see this stuff crumbles, and that lets in space, air, the breeze of spirit can flow through, and we're enabled to stand back and to step out into more of our greater identity. Our greater awareness is allowed to come through, especially once we start getting rid of our attitudes and beliefs around time. What's a good book? The Tao of Physics, that's an older one. Find some good books on quantum physics and on time. And look at superposition and look at these things and allow it to shake you up deep inside. Allow the inner beliefs that you've built up where you place limits on yourself. All beliefs lead to limits. Beliefs limit us. and they're handy, and we work with them and we operate with them until we're blessed and we're given the vision to see their unreality. And that can be a rocky time, because beliefs are like tinker toys, they're interlocking. And you can get a whole cascade going, which is what I've got going right now around this thing of losing boundaries as something that's legitimate and good and worthy of well, that's hard to say. I feel just a lot of you in head with that. And you want to respond and say, well, of course it's good. But that's your beliefs talking. And so I'm going to suggest, well, okay, that's one perspective and way to look at it. But try this out, go in heart. And is it not just more divide and conquer? We're brethren. We're one people. We're the human family, the human race. And I think another perspective that's legitimate is that all of that has been used to separate us and give us causes so that we can fight and argue and disagree and be separate, and divide. Okay, let me go on. Oh, well, this is good. Both time and boundaries are totally unreal. And this guy, he can't even think in terms of chronological time. Bill asks him to lay out how he developed into the space that his head is in now. And he's really unable to do that because they have no concept of time the way we do. And that's an important one. Time is linked into most everything else. I mean, all you have to do is go watch one of Ian Lungold's lectures on the Mayan calendar, and your concepts around time will take a major beating. It will just really sit you down and leave you shaking your head that you thought you knew what time was and what a calendar was and what it was for. Well, you don't, and I don't. And so anyway, time isn't. It just isn't. They even admitted that it was an intentional thing to break up Bill and Carrie. They were once Project Camelot. And apparently it was the direct orders of the elite to bust them up. And so there's just some more divide and conquer. The alternate media, obviously they were doing some good. Now, obviously, too, there's disinfo on Project Camelot. There's disinfo everywhere. Anything that gets really close to truth has got some disinfo wrapped in with it. And we'll be okay, folks. We will be able to sort it out because heart does that. Heart just knows. So again, it's a matter of doing the shoveling, getting the crap out. We're already these perfect beings that know and understand everything. And we're in process of cleaning the windshields, and just taking bath after bath. Our energy needs to be cleansed and cleaned. These beliefs need to be gotten rid of. As we do that, the knowledge can come forth. Until then, the knowledge is blocked by all of the crap, which is the thoughts and the beliefs and the attitudes and the misunderstandings. So, don't feel like we have to be dummies and manipulated forever. It's not like that. It's not like that at all. And they'd like you to believe that. They want you to believe that you're peons. It's shocking, too, because they made a real fool of Bill Ryan in this. It shows how the elite look at him and at the alternative media and at us. And this guy's that he's interviewing, uh, kind of a hitman sort of guy, only that's too cartoonish. It's not like that. His initial job was to destroy Bill, feed him full of disinformation, and just destroy his reputation. But, you know, Bill's kind of a character. And the guy took to him. And so instead, they wound up on a more friendly basis. And so Bill has this interview, which is powerful. But um, you get to see firsthand and to feel how disinformation is very much one of their major tools. Um, and also, if you do decide to watch the interview, please don't believe it all. Um, you don't know what's manipulation and what's not for the most part, but we have to be able to look at things and be disinterested enough, be disidentified enough, uh, not to be vesting deep belief in things. And if you don't have deep belief in things, if you don't identify with them, then you're nimble. And it's like you're floating on those ball bearings in heart. And you can shift and change as the new intuition and the understanding comes forward. Um, and so just don't believe at all, because this guy is unashamed to be manipulating. Now, it also is one of the best illustrations I've ever seen about how all and everything is built on the foundation of money. And money is absolutely a tool of power and control and nothing else. There's not really anything good about it. And money is the real weapon or method of control, and its ultimate use is divide and conquer everywhere. And turning us against one another and in the competition thing. And it's just endless. Um, and how media is the ultimate dumb downer. It's a real drug. And I like it. This guy looks down on the peons, on the mind-numbed robots that most of the Western world have become. And he issues a challenge. He says, take the 14-day test. Turn off the TV. Absolutely. Have nothing to do with it anywhere for 14 days. See if you can do it. All right. I'll agree with that. You've heard me talk about it before. So, I'm going to apologize a little bit. Well, why should I apologize? This is just where I am, my friends. And that's what I share with you. That's what's real. That's what flows from my heart. And I trust that just as when I was watching this interview, I was plugged into that energy and receiving it and connected up with it, I trust that I'm not feeding you that kind of energy. And that in spite of the heaviness of the subject matter here, that there's a flow of light and of love that is nurturing and supportive of you and of who and what you are and of your ability to do this, to take this on. But I do want to say, love yourself. Don't bury yourself in negative energy, and then beat yourself up for being down over the whole thing. Love yourself. Be gentle with yourself. Have some things set aside. I've got some humor stuff, just to lighten it up. Be sure to have something planned or programmed in there for yourself when you take something on that's exceptionally heavy, so that you can balance that out. If you don't do this for yourself consciously, then life is going to do it for you. It's like Dimitri Halley teaches so beautifully, and I guess it's a Jungian concept, so we have to give the full credit to Carl Gustav Jung. but the emotions are really the two poles. And so you have happiness and sadness, and that's one emotion. And so to the extent that you're deeply into either side of that seesaw, that's a guarantee. You're writing the ticket to be just that deeply into the other side. It's one, and everything seeks balance. And even if it didn't, it's a good idea to go for balance. The heart is a place of ultimate balance. And maybe we can define the ultimate balance as love with that capital L. I don't know. But I really feel that flowing strongly through me right now. I myself am uplifted. And, mine can't make any sense of that. I haven't shared anything particularly uplifting with you, but I bet you can feel the energy. I know some of you can. And so I think on that note, I'll close and I'll say good evening and God bless. Like, imagine a great, big, huge, faceted crystal or diamond. And it's huge, and it's got like almost an infinite number of facets. It's so beautiful. And maybe there's a sun in the middle, it's just exquisite, unbelievably beautiful. And each one of us, each sentient being is a facet. And so if a blade of grass is sentient, then it's one of the facets. And what that is, a puppy or an extraterrestrial, or a sun has a consciousness, so does a galaxy, so does the universe, all facets or groupings of facets. And each facet is in effect a different perspective. It's all one. There's nothing that's not the one, but each one has a different angle of vision or perspective on reality. And they're the only one that sees from precisely that perspective. And so there's this intensity of individuality on the one hand, and the individuality is what makes the thing beautiful, all the individual facets. But empty is also true. And overall, it's good. I mean, we don't find that we're polarizing so much, and we're amazed at things that used to, really pull our tail or rattle our cage, or whatever you want to say, things that used to upset us, or that we used to feel like we had to take a stand on one way or another. We're amazed to find ourselves quite unconcerned. Things that used to be important are just, we're not taking ourselves so seriously. And the things of this world so seriously. And there are such major benefits to that. If you're experiencing any of it already, then you know what I mean, or you at least have an inkling. But if you're really in the midst of this, uh, you're just a whole new person that you're constantly getting to know and getting acquainted with. And you don't know yourself. Hi, folks. Would that I could always come to you all joyful and carefree. And I want you to center in heart, because underneath everything, that's always there. Not just for me, but for everyone. That's in heart. And the rest of what happens is more on the surface. But as we center in heart, we have a root that goes down deep into self and deep into the earth, if you will, that it grounds us, it anchors us, it gives us balance, and it helps us take the things of the everyday life. Now, I've hesitated to share with you lately. I'm going through some getting rid of beliefs. And it's rocking my world. I might have maybe less, and that's one thing that you're acquainted with, is that you don't know. And overall, it's really rather nice, you know. But easy? Hmm. On the one hand, it's totally easy. On the other hand, it's hard work. So it's both at the same time. And I can't apologize for that. That's just how it is for me. Okay. I talked a little while back about, is there hierarchy or is there not? And there are some that are so radically committed to this equalization thing, this no hierarchy whatsoever, that they're not seeing the other side of that. And I'm going to say they're being polarized there. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter. I'm finding so far two sides of pretty much every coin. And so on the one hand, it's absolutely true. All is equal, all is one, and all we are. I used to think of it less beliefs than most, you know, might have gone through quite a number of them, but we're all riddled with beliefs through and through. And so it's a constant arising if we're, I don't like these words, but if we're on the spiritual path, you know, if we're warriors of truth, if we're beings of light incarnate here. And I'm finding it intensifying. And it's hard. It's like at first the beliefs that get exposed and get to go up in flames are more specific. But as time goes on, we see webs of beliefs, things that are connected up that begin to fall apart. And we begin to be less and less anchored and locked into the matrix, and more empty. Now, another way to say that is centered in heart.